The kingdom of Eldoria had once been a land of peace and prosperity, but now it lay in ruins. The Dark Legion, a ruthless army of conquerors, had swept across the land, destroying villages and leaving only ashes behind. The people had lost all hope, except for one last warrior. His name was Kael. Clad in battered armor with a sword that had seen countless battles, he stood as the final defender of his homeland. He had fought alongside his brothers, but now he was alone. The king had fallen, the royal army was no more, and the last bastion of Eldoria, the city of Valmere, was under siege. As the sun set, casting a blood-red hue over the battlefield, Kael stood atop the city walls, watching the Dark Legion approach. Their banners fluttered in the wind, their war drums echoing like a death knell. He tightened his grip on his sword, a voice called out behind him. It was Lyra, a healer and the last hope for the wounded. "Kael, we cannot win," she said, her voice trembling. "The people must flee." Kael turned to her, his gaze fierce yet calm. "If I fall, tell them to run, but while I still stand, Valmere will not bow." With a battle cry that shook the heavens, Kael leaped into the fray as the enemy breached the gates. His sword became a blur, cutting through the invaders like a tempest. He fought not for glory, not for vengeance, but for the people who still lived. But even the strongest warrior could not stand against an army alone. As the battle raged, Kael was struck by a dozen blades. Blood soaked his armor, but he did not fall. He drove his sword into the ground, using it to hold himself up. Then, from the hills, a horn sounded, a call of salvation. The people of Eldoria had not fled. Inspired by Kael's courage, the remaining warriors, farmers, and even healers had taken up arms. They charged down upon the Dark Legion with a fury born of desperation and hope. The tide of battle turned. The Dark Legion, caught off guard, began to retreat. By dawn, they were gone. Eldoria was bloodied but not broken. Kael, barely alive, was carried to the city square. As he looked upon his people, he smiled. He had fought not to win, but to inspire, and in that he had succeeded. And so, though he was the last warrior of Eldoria, he ensured that Eldoria would never truly fall.